Um, yeah. So what do your programs do for Halloween? Is that an okay thing? You know, we've sort of ebbed in political correctness around Halloween and whether kids can have candy and or healthy snacks, and then allergies to the snacks that are brought in, and if they wear costumes, if staff wear costumes, if it's celebrated at all, if it's a message from the devil, you know. So
we're not allowed to do anything. And
really,
the last 2 years, yeah. And I think 3 years ago it was okay, and all of a sudden we were told we cannot do anything. And I took it to I was on the executive committee board, and I just said, you know, it's so appropriate for preschoolers to dress up. I just didn't get this. And we were said it's district policy that we cannot.
And we're the opposite. We do all of it. I dressed up as a bee. Here's my bee costume. Our preschool does a parade, and they trick or treat at every classroom door. And I don't know if they give out treats or not. I'm not sure what the preschool does, but we have our ECFE families have their kiddos come all week in their costumes if they want to. So we're the exact opposite. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, miss
it. Yuji and Becca, I think Kelly was already here. We were just talking about Halloween and ECFE programs and what your school districts allow or not. Oh, Kelly's saying that her program does allow it. So
our preschool classes, they have pajama day, and they bring a cozy friend, whether a stuffed animal or something that they have from home, and they do it that way. And then they have a special snack. That's how they do Halloween for preschool here. ECFE, if they want to come and dress up, they can, but we don't have candy or we don't pass out anything. So just generalize to say not scary costumes, but something else, you know, than scary. That's all we do here. Kind of like Ellen.
Do parents see? I would be that parent that I would go, can I bring cupcakes? You know, and like bring stuff for Halloween, and then I would have to be told no. Or
well, we allow parents to bring treats, but they are not allowed to eat them, and they can send them home. So I had a mom make cookies for everybody, and she handed them out at the very end in baggies so that everybody could take them home. So they can't eat them in school, but they can go away with them.
Okay. Interesting, the variety. How about you guys in Roseville, Megan?
Yeah, we can't really celebrate anything. And so, which, yeah, no happy times here. But we, if the families come in costumes, if the kids do, all kind of families have been wearing fun clothes, you know, Halloween clothes. Kids have come in costumes. We don't discourage it. We can't do any food because of COVID, not even in our parenting sessions.
Yeah,
we can't. We used to be able to do food and coffee and tea and all that. We can't do any of that. So no treats, but we've seen some cuties in some costumes. Yeah.
Fun. So Naomi's saying Wayzata does nothing, but some families dress up their child. Preschool has a pumpkin party and explore inside of a pumpkin. Yeah, like turn it into a science project. You know, like get their hands into those guts and then clean those seeds and let them take it to the squirrels. You know, I volunteer at wildlife rehab there in Roseville, and they send something out to volunteers. Like we give sweet potato and then chunks of pumpkin, you know, to the squirrels and critters that are in rehab. And but they were saying about taking the seeds and cleaning them off and then like giving those to the squirrels. So yeah, I mean, you could have a seasonal celebration, I suppose, without it being Halloween-ish.
I know St. Paul for a long time has had not doing celebrations in the classroom that are of real specific holidays that might be not celebrated by everybody. But like my son yesterday, his class had an amazing, they just call it their fall harvest party. And it's bigger than a Halloween party. I mean, the kids put so much into it. The older kids help out. It's a multi-age classroom, help out deciding what will happen. So they had a big blowout. I think you can have celebrations without it being what we nostalgically grew up with, and still have it be really fun for kids. And Maplewood has a similar policy. We have such a diverse district that you can't make any assumptions about what people feel comfortable with and what will make people feel excluded. So yeah, we had a pumpkin week. Our theme this week was pumpkins, and I think it made it a little easier that Halloween didn't fall on a class day. And so it was easier to kind of put off. But some years I think it's a little harder when parents really want to do what they grew up doing themselves.
Yeah.
I think too, I think it's such a disservice for, especially just our district, because that's all I can speak to, that they have just cut everything off. And I just think it's such a learning opportunity if families were to come in and talk about what celebrations they do in their home, in their culture. I think just birth through 12th grade, if we just incorporate, I realize there's a lot of holidays, there's lots of celebrations. I realize that. And I know that teachers can't know everything about all the cultures. But I think it's okay for us to say we don't know, and then invite people in who do know, who do celebrate it. I just think it could be such an amazing opportunity. And for us, our district has just closed off everything. Like, you can't say anything. And so I don't know what message that sends to kids. My kids that are bigger now, when they were in kindergarten, they had this festival of lights. And for the month of December, they learned about all, Christmas and Hanukkah and just so many things, right? I can't think of all of them right now, but lots of things. And then they got to, each of the cultures that they learned about, they got to make a art project. And then all the families were invited in, and that was called the Festival of Lights. They just lit up the school and they displayed all of what they learned. It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful because they got to learn all the different celebrations that happen in December. And my big kids still talk about that. And then when my youngest went to kindergarten, it was taken away. They couldn't even do that anymore.
Oh,
I felt so sad for him. Like, he was going to miss out with what his older siblings remember most about in their elementary school. It just seems, and part of it, as you all know, like, there are some teachers who totally celebrate a birthday or bring a little holiday celebration in. They just don't let their principals or their directors know. So, there's a little hit and miss consistency piece in our district. But I don't know, I just think it's a disservice to all of our families to just cut it off and not talk about it at all.
interesting. So I'm curious then, like when, and Megan, your example is a really good one of like a sudden policy shift, right? Or a major, is there a presentation of information about that is understandable to families and to teachers about why? No?
Not here in Roseville. It's just been cut off. Like, as teachers too, we've asked in meetings, why all of a sudden can't we do anything? Why we used to do this? Or what we have been finding out is that just there's a lot of inconsistency within the schools. So the Festival of Lights was only happening in one of our 7 elementary schools. So it's more teacher specific activities that brought them in. And so I think my assumption is that when the district heard that there's lots of different things happening, they just cut it off. But there was no communication ever to us as teachers or as a parent in the district. Nothing ever came to us. It was just completely cut off. And I am a little bit on the gutsy side and will speak my mind. And so we were in a really, really, really big district meeting. And I just asked, I was like, why can't we? And then like some big heads I think came down from the ceiling and just cut the conversation off immediately. It was not good, but I don't know. I'm a little bit of a button pusher, so I don't really care.
Hey,
You know,
I kind of concern myself a little bit about that, Megan, too, over the years. And I feel like if I can historically feel like where I've been, at least, and I feel like it's programmatic, like our training was about sensitivity first, right? This was 1988 to 92 in my bachelor's program. It was about sensitivity. So we didn't want to not celebrate somebody. So then we said, what are we going to celebrate? And that's what we wanted to define. And then I feel like Kwanzaa and Hanukkah and Christmas, those were the three big ones in that big season, were done. And then for like, I don't know, it was like 10 years, that was okay. But then I think there was this, oh, wait a second, there's more cultures than the three that we're representing. So now we have to broaden that. And I feel like that brought chaos to the situation, which I think, Megan, you're talking about, is like, it just kind of, and then certain people are doing certain things and then it was hard to control. So then what do? We quickly solve this without discussion. We're just gonna, that's harsh maybe. There was probably discussions, but I feel like then it just kind of came to nothing. If we can't, we're afraid, that if we say yes to ours, that we have to say yes to everybody else's, is some of the thought. And I don't want my child hearing about that. So there's fears that are out there. And then in the schools, it's like, well, we have to honor all. And if we honor all, how do we do that? And that's too much time away from the other things we're already doing. So we bring it down and we try to find neutral things. So now, like in our district, I know here, it's if we're going to celebrate something, we're celebrating what it's like to be a Blue Jacket. Woohoo! So we're all Blue Jackets. And in we have expectations and we have these 5 things we want, about citizenry and about being kind and about being generous or thoughtful, those things, whatever those things are. I think we kind of focused everything there educationally. And I think it's hard in early childhood and especially in family education to not talk about culture and not celebrate and not to do the things that they're doing at home, then how we can reflect that at school. I think that's why it gets complicated again. Does that, I don't know, maybe somebody else has another kind of way of looking at it, how it's kind of progressed and where it's gone, but that would be my thought, Susan, without any research. That's just.
Oh yeah, I understand sort of historical change, and it's always interesting to me when there's change and then how administrations handle change, right? Which is why, diverse families was like back in the, I'm older than you guys, so like back in the early 80s, like we really didn't recognize diversity all that much, although it was like and then all of a sudden in the 80s, we were very much attending to, culture and diversity. And then at a certain point, there was like evidence-based stuff and then brain development research, right? So there was kind of that wave. And you saw a shift in policy and in curricula and in professional development and things like that. And I see, the emphasis on technology is another wave, and with variable kind of attention to it. And but along the way, as we have become we attempt to be a much more inclusive society, we've also become a much more polarized society, right? And I think technology has a lot to do there with information spread and misinformation spread and personal voice. And again, these divisions that, and I feel for administrators. I'm not faulting anybody. I'm just curious about how different administrations, because I think of all of us on the front lines. So there's like, what do we do in our individual classrooms? And how much do we adhere to our local system, and what their guidelines are. And then, but then there's also the reality of what I see is like families with small children are part of society, and they go to Target and they see, or they go to Costco and they see costumes, right? And everybody in their neighborhood is talking about trick or treating, or I'm not going to go trick or treating, but it's a thing, right? It was a thing when Lori and Mary Kay and I were growing up. Yes, that far back, and even farther back. And it's still a thing, right? And so again, I'm mostly feeling for teachers, because I've been in that situation too, where you have to be the explainer. You have to be the cop that says, no, we're not doing this. But if I'm not given ammunition, and especially if it goes against my personal beliefs, like I love the idea about the Festival of Lights. Like, you don't have to capture every single possible culture in the world, because your community is defined by the cultures of the people who make up that community, right? And so if you open it up to, we're going to celebrate what we celebrate as a community, who would like to share what your family celebrates, right? Then you're being inclusive within that community and you're learning, right? So, but I just think of the times that as being put on the front line, there's like an administrative or other policy that comes down, and we have to be the ones to communicate that policy, that if we're not given, and especially to me, sorry, I know I'm not finishing sentences, but to me, it's also incredibly ironic when it's all it should be for children's development, right? For family well-being and for pedagogical value. The three things that we are hired to do, and then you don't give us the information to be good teachers, to be caring educators, right? And to build an inclusive, caring community. Anyway, all right, so.
We got a specific like document regarding Halloween in Maplewood, and it went to everybody birth through 12, I think. But they have a whole list of reasons why we specifically don't have Halloween celebrations that are socioeconomic, health, and cultural religious. And they do suggest some other possibilities, like fall or harvest festival things, just that don't necessarily fall on October 31st. But it's interesting because their recommendation for communicating with families is like super not including all of these reasons. And I think because they don't want to get into arguments with people coming back with, but this, but that. So like, they have a sample of such communication follows. District 622 does not schedule or encourage any specific practices for Halloween during school hours. For a variety of reasons, we ask that Halloween celebrations occur outside of school hours. Like, that's the communication to families. But I do think there's a difference between celebrating something that's cultural and teaching about different cultural celebrations.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's the line that gets sometimes blurry or uncomfortable for people is, are you teaching, hey, this is what Halloween is, and this is a pretty big part of American culture, or are you celebrating Halloween when maybe some people don't feel comfortable with that? So I think, I think it, but I know that as a parent educator, I totally every year do a lesson on the importance of family rituals and celebrations. And so we very much talk about, what do you celebrate in your house and how do you have traditions with your kids? So we talk about it, but the actual celebrating is more touchy, I think.
I'm going to try something new this year, and I'm going to try and take that lesson and I'm going to put it into January. Like a couple weeks after the holidays, because I used to always teach it like in between Halloween and Thanksgiving. But after talking with a coworker, I think I'm going to try in January and see, because then for those families that did celebrate something over, the winter months that have happened previously, they can reflect, and families that have holidays that are coming up can be a little more like, think about it ahead of time. And I'm curious to see how it goes. But we do the same. We talk about traditions and why traditions are important. And then we kind of also tie it into, there's traditions, there's rituals, there's different things, and almost bring schedules into it as well. And teaching that children need predictability. There's good things that come from that.
And my kids' elementary school in St. Paul also every year has this, it's probably their biggest festival type school-wide activity of the year is the multicultural fair. And whatever culture you come from, you can volunteer to have a booth, and it's fascinating. Teachers run some of it, families run a lot of it. We have German celebrations and Hmong dancers, and I mean, just everything worldwide. And it feels very, very celebratory. So it feels like people are allowed to really be seen and share and be valued for their cultures, which I think is what's missing when you do the we don't do anything.
Mhm.
I think that's really nice for a really big district like yours.
I'm having trouble hearing you, Melissa.
Try and do that, we might not see diversity actually.
I'm catching a little bit of what you're
I don't
saying.
know
It's in a
what's
small
going on.
district, you wouldn't get much representation, maybe from different cultures. Yeah, our school is small, my kids' school, and it's not a district-wide thing. It's just our school. I think there's around 300 students or something like that, 200 students. Anyhow, it's not like a huge school, but it is in the inner city. So there's a huge amount of diversity in the school.
Well, and we're having equity discussions every Wednesday in our district. I'm sorry, one Wednesday a month for PLC, which is really great. But one thing we talked about was respecting families with that are different. And so sometimes inviting them to come in and talk about your holiday, talk about, it's like, you're different from us. Come talk to us about how different you are.
Right.
Right. So there's that too. Like, you don't want to be all, come tell us about your culture. And then you've got a language barrier. So you have to really be careful about assuming that people want to talk
Mhm.
about where they came from, because, our Somali families, they don't want to talk about their refugee camps. They would like to forget all about it. So anyway, it was just an interesting discussion, and it would be fun for them to come and read in their native language, but would they feel comfortable? Would you feel comfortable if you were in another country? Sorry, I'm holding my dog to keep her from eating the cat food. Would you feel comfortable going into a foreign country and they would ask you to come read a book in your language? I don't know. Would you? Wouldn't you? So something.
Especially if you're not a teacher or an educator, you're just, you're
Mhm.
something, you do something else as a career, it would be
Yep.
kind of awkward, maybe, or tokenizing.
I think there's a couple things that, like when we talk about political correctness, I don't think a lot of this is about political correctness, at least not from my perspective. And one thing I can offer as a parent, okay, so now I'm talking about when children who are now 31 were like 5 or 6, okay? I was deeply offended by the celebration of consumerist America and seeing how much we could spend and how much we could buy and how much we could, and my religion does not encourage that as a rule. And so when they said, hey, would you like to come to first grade and talk about what your celebrations are? I took that opportunity like a banshee.
Yeah.
I walked in and I said, okay, so here's what Christians are celebrating. And I talked about the birth of Jesus in a public school. And I said, this is what Christians believe. I didn't say this is what you need to believe. But as I watch, if all of your craft projects in December are red and white or red and green, if all of your craft projects around Halloween are orange and black, if, I think you're saying something and not intending to say it. Now, I'm not saying that you don't do an orange and black art project, but if that's your theme for the week, that might be a little overkill for some people. And culturally, for example, Hanukkah is not a major celebration in the Jewish tradition. It's a minor one. The only reason we know anything about Hanukkah is because it happens near Christmas. And so to celebrate that together isn't respectful. Now, to have a Jewish parent come in and talk about Yom Kippur and being sorry for things you've done that are not good and then helping others, that's an honoring of Judaism. And I personally wish we didn't celebrate Santa Claus so much. So if I go into an early childhood classroom and with some of my colleagues, one day they'll have candy canes in December, and one day they'll have reindeer, and one day they'll have, and we're not celebrating Christmas, but yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. So I, as a person of faith, in the majority faith, find that, well, we might not be majority anymore, but I find that very offensive myself, because that's not what I wanted my kids to learn. At 5 years old, they could repeat back when somebody said, I would like for Christmas, the response to that their mom expected was, Christmas is about giving, not about getting. And I can go away if you want, because I know that's not a majority opinion. But I had an evening class that I taught for toddlers, and this was one of the greatest classes because they were often very diverse. Both parents would come, so we had someone speaking one language and someone speaking English and that. And we were in the gym with the 3-year-olds, moving everything around, and we were all keeping an eye on them and making sure they weren't, like doing anything hurtful or hurting themselves. But we ended up talking about New Year's. And I think it was because it was near the Hindu New Year's, and we had a Hindu family with us. And so I said, well, how was your weekend? And they told us that they had celebrated whatever they celebrated. And then we had a Chinese family and we had a Spanish family. And so people started talking about their New Year's traditions. That seemed more authentic and valuable than some of the, I don't want to talk against the celebration of lights. But I think that when we kind of try and glom everybody else's stuff with ours and assume that means respectful, yeah, maybe not. So
I have a question for you all as professionals. Do you think it parallels a little bit of the concern of prayers in schools? And I don't like to get political, but I want to bring up a viewpoint that when we say that as a district, we're going to teach something, does it parallel the concern why we took prayer out of school? Because we don't want the district to pray. I mean, it shouldn't be led. Are these things that shouldn't be led by schools in the public realm? Or is that why, is that a fair parallel to think about it through that lens, or is that not? Susan? I mean, I kind of feel that it somewhat parallels. I don't know. It's that concern about what is it that we can ask the district to be leading in, and teaching about is different, like you said, like was said earlier, than the practice of. I don't know.
Practice of feels more like endorsement, like we're saying this is what we should be doing, and that can feel very exclusionary, I think.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I don't know. My main thing is inclusivity in everything. I want people to feel welcome wherever they are. And especially at school, and especially in public schools, that to me is part of our calling, is to welcome everybody who's there. But Beaver Lake, my early learning childhood center, we have a prayer room because we have so many people who are Muslim and need to pray several times a day. And it's like, we would like to respect that. Here's a place where you can go be private and pray. And we have a couple paras who do that during the day, and they'll just be gone for 5 minutes and come back. But we're certainly not being like over the intercom, now is the time to pray, right? We're not doing anything like that. We're just providing space for people to be who they are.
And that's not to say as a Christian, you can't go in there and take a moment.
Well, absolutely. And that's why I
Oh,
think
yeah.
when it's in the individual's hands, you can pray as a child in your classroom if you want to, but you're not leading others in it. And I mean, you can do those individual things. So here's the second one. Sorry. What about does it parallel when we have our sensitivities and our specific people who are here for the Native American culture, right? So what is the other phraseology that I could be using here? That would be
Indigenous people?
Thank you. Indigenous people groups. Okay, so people who are indigenous to this area. So my husband, who teaches in another school district, not this one, has somebody who's in the elementary schools and is wanting to bring up sensitivities and teach about the cultures, right? But now recently brought something to burn in an environment where children could come in and inhale and breathe in that which is being burned. And it is questionable, right? I mean, and they want to teach this then to the other children. So here's another place where I think the fears come up is people are afraid that people are going to take children past a place that's appropriate. And who gets to decide? Who gets to decide on those things? And that's, I don't know. It feels like an out there thing. I thought I'd never ever even say those words, but my husband brought that up this fall. And he's like, what do I say to this? This just doesn't seem like that's appropriate. But it's sensitivity. And I'm like, oh my dear Lord. I'm sorry.
Greta, is the reason he thinks that it might not be appropriate have to do with breathing in particulate, or have to do with them participating in something that is not necessarily part of their faith tradition? Because I'm going to guess you have yoga and meditation in every single one of your schools, right? Don't you do something breathing to calm yourselves down? Doesn't that come out of yoga tradition? I'm not saying you're celebrating transcendental meditation when you do that, but my question would be about the breathing in a classroom. It's the same thing as the concerns about COVID. I would take that outside, not to be dismissive of it, but to take it out in a more natural environment where it might be happening for Indigenous people. And it would also be safer for those who have breathing sensitivities and things like that.
Yeah, this is really.
There does seem to be a fine line between educating and enlightening and people who may find it to be practicing. I think the bottom line is, I think that would be awesome, Greta. I would be all in. I'd love to learn about that. But you know that there will be some parents who will go home and be like, you will not blah, 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 adjective, swear words, believe what happened at my kid's school today.
Right.
Which I think sort of brings about the whole, like, you can't please everyone. You know, I think for the most part, people are going to, okay, sure, that's interesting. And some people are going to be like, how dare you? And I think that, I think our topic today was to be about, like, how do you make sure that everyone is heard? But sometimes what happens in your room offends people because they have a standard of how things should go. So I think a lot of this, it's hard. Now, the other thing you could do, like what your husband could do, is just say, here's what we're going to do. And you tell families what's going to happen. And you say, if you'd like your child to opt out, they opt out. And so all done. So the kids who are interested and want to participate can do that. And the parents who think it's just an idea.
You know,
Then-
I think that it, oh, sorry, somebody, oh, Mary Kay, were you gonna say?
It's okay. Go.
Um, so just listening to, I think part of it has to do with how much agency and authority the individual educator is given, right? Because all while you guys are talking, I'm thinking, like, I just went like Halloween crazy in my undergraduate class yesterday and brought in treats and wore my Halloween sweater. And, when we were picking the videos they were going to discuss, one group were the ghosts and the other group were the pumpkins, and and asked them about if they're doing zombie, these are undergraduates and it's just like a thing. And, but it's interesting because in higher ed, and I don't know whether, but like nobody comes to my classroom and slaps my hand if I talk about Halloween or I don't talk about Halloween or, whatever. And, and it's, so I think, and so then I start thinking about public school versus private schools, right? And the idea about prayer in the classroom. And because public schools are publicly funded, that there's that administrative shift to the public with a capital P versus what a few people believe, like, well, we all believe in prayer. Oh gosh, we don't all believe in prayer. And again, those of us in earlier generations see this big shift, right? I mean, we were part of that generation that used to have the Pledge of Allegiance, the Pledge of Allegiance with the words under God, right? And I don't do they still say the Pledge of Allegiance? But if they do, they probably say it without the under God part, right? And so there's that.
I still say it in Burnsville elementary schools, at least before the pandemic, they were still saying the pledge in classrooms.
Okay. Yeah, and then is the under God part still there?
You betcha.
It is. Now, isn't that interesting? Because why doesn't somebody push back and say which God?
So much.
There is some pushback. I mean, if you're Jehovah's Witness, you are not doing any pledges. So
right.
Even way a million years ago when I was student teaching, had a student in the classroom who sat down through the pledge because it was like, this is against my faith.
Yeah.
And that was very respected and allowed, but it definitely brought it to my mind as like, is this appropriate?
Yeah. And, so again, I think it comes back to that discussion and how much of it is administrative. We don't want to do this because we don't want to get sued. We've got so many other things to worry about. We don't want, one more hassle kind of thing. And I get that, and how much of it is about teaching and about learning and about development and about community, because you could have an open discussion about the Pledge of Allegiance. You could have an open discussion about who does and who doesn't, and about why Jehovah's Witnesses, I have a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses in my extended family. And, like, why is it important? Like, what is part of their religion and their faith, right? So again, it's a learning opportunity so that within that school classroom, there's that sense of diversity in our community, which is this classroom, which models then their questions that they can take to wider society. So
I think it's much easier to have those discussions with adults than it is with kids. And I think that's where a lot of times the lines are drawn. So you're going to find the most pushback probably in elementary school. And then the older the student, the more discussion and, just conversation around things and openness can kids get their own feeling for what they believe or what they're interested in. I think even by high school, you can have much more discussion. And certainly, like you were saying, with your undergrads, you can, I don't know. So I feel comfortable in our parent ed class talking about almost anything. But I don't necessarily celebrate stuff in the class. I mean, partly because we have 45 minutes or an hour a week with parents. So that's part of it too, probably.
Yeah, interesting. So Ellen brought up, and this is, we are kind of, I was kind of seeing if the conversation segued in this direction. um, uh, when we last met, and I hope you all had wonderful MEA breaks, you know, one of the topics we sort of got to towards the end, and then I said, well, why don't we pick this up the next time we meet, is about sort of parent presence in classrooms and the idea of inclusivity, you know, and the sort of the power the parents hold. And I think maybe this also gets to what you're saying, Becca, you know, with having the conversations or the representation to small children. The parents are sort of that arbiter of what I do and don't want my child to learn, or what I do and don't want my child exposed to. And so, and the great thing about ECFE, among many, is that parent presence, whereas in a lot of early childhood programs and that sort of thing, it's almost like baby elementary school. So the parents aren't even there except for like parent teacher meetings or things like that. So, but anyway, but we all do deal with parents and embrace parents and love parents and support parents and advocate for parents. So how do you maintain inclusivity in your classroom regarding with an understanding that there is a certain dynamic of parent power? So examples of parent power can be the parent who has been in ECFE for a number of years and is a very familiar fixture in the classes and enjoys that identity of familiarity. He or she knows the teachers, you know, they do a lot of volunteer. They're, you know, they walk in, everybody knows them, you know, that sort of thing. Another example of parent power are the parents who know each other. So they come in and they've been the Tuesday morning parents for the last 3 years. And those same 3 moms sit together and sometimes will either be the great parents who will chime in discussion, or sometimes they can hijack the discussion, or, you know, and sometimes they can be like mean girls and they can kind of rule the thing. There's also the parent sort of lack of power, where a parent can be new, they can come in, they cannot feel comfortable. And maybe it's, again, speaking of culture and language, you know, that they, English isn't their first language, they're new to the area and they don't have that neighborhood capital of knowing resources and people and places, so that you can talk about the McDonald's over on the corner and they're going to look blank because they just don't know that. Right. And they're going to feel like they don't really fit in. And then I think some of the worst, or I would say some of the strongest, you know, examples of parent power can be where parents go to a school district, right? And they want district policy shifted, or they want a particular person hired or fired, or they want, you know, and they make noise, and it can end up being not comfortable for an individual educator, depending on how that information is trickled down. So anyway, so, and it can also be for parents that are wanting to have Halloween celebrated, and other parents that are like, over my dead body. You know? Certainly not if there are nuts in those treats. So, so how do you all handle? And Lori, I'm so glad you're here, because I am just sure that you have had a career full of parent relationship stories. Anyway, so I'll shut up and just listen.
Well, I have to say that one of my classes, my Monday morning class, it's a separating class. There's some really thoughtful people in the class. And we have one member of the class, one parent in the class who's an English language learner from Vietnam. And she comes to class, she's very faithful. She plays with her kids while she's in class. But we were talking about ways that we find time to do things with adults. That was what we were talking about, how to find time to do adult things with our, and everyone else had shared, and it wasn't like she was pushed to share, but she started a story, and And it ran for about 4 minutes, and the other parents listened carefully and asked questions, even though she was very difficult to understand in some parts of it. And I'm like, yes. Because that's what you're hoping, that's what I'm hoping for, is that they are learning from each other, and that everyone feels included and like somebody will listen to their story. I thought it was great. So.
And kudos to you, Mary Kay, for setting up an environment where that happened. Do you know what I mean? Well, because I have been in environments where someone quiet starts talking and they're socially awkward, or what they're saying is repetitive. And then other people just start talking over the top. But they didn't do that. They could have been like, you're boring. We're going to go talk over here. But so, I mean, it had a lot to do with how you set it up.
Well, one of the moms is a social worker and one of the moms is a kindergarten teacher. So I really come in with a whole lot of assistance. But yeah, how we treat and respect each other matters. I think in parent discussions, the things that are going to get us all excited are like a Black Lives Matter poster. In the district south of me, some teachers had to take those down because it was considered a political statement. I personally, because I have some Black people in my family, don't think that should be a political statement. I think it should be common sense, but but there's other things that, we can get excited about. But the fact that when they're listening to each other, I think is magic. And thanks for the credit, but I'm just delighted when I'm there and get to watch. I am.
I don't know if any of you have heard, but Mankato just made national news. Have you heard this? Mankato early childhood.
In a good way or not good way?
Well, there's conservative sites on Facebook, but also on television, where I should put in the links here the article. Mankato District offers anti-racist parenting class to parents of toddlers. This came out August 7th, 2021. And they have shut down the Mankato social Facebook sites for a few days because we are getting all sorts of comments. In this article that was, they actually took a picture of our brochure of our class that was called Parenting for Equity 3 to 5.
Lori, you guys are not the only district offering this.
Exactly. But
Roosevelt Apple Valley Egan has one going. And it's called anti-racist parenting. Why are they targeting Mankato?
Because they have the conservative pushback happening in the same community, right? Is that what it is, Lori?
Oh, we're having all kinds of issues. And we had a family academy community class, which another parent Ed and I hosted, and we had to shut it down because of a man that came on. And it was very interesting. And he also showed up for our district, all district rah-rah before the year started, where all the teachers met, and which we do every year, but we did this at an outdoor venue. And he came and played loud music, and he was hollering and, with a megaphone and everything. And it's interesting because we have a little bit of history, because one of our parent Eds, he was court ordered to take some parenting classes. And so one of our parent Eds had a 10-week relationship with this man because she was one-on-one parenting. And so when she and I were facilitating this community online topic on parenting for equity, she knew right away when he came on that we were in trouble. And I did not, because I didn't know who he was. And he is just in the community, just really, he's gone to school board member or meetings, and he is, so here I'm just going along with our PowerPoint and our information and the doll study, you know, that we talk about. And it was a good thing I didn't know, because, you know, I was fine with what I was doing and saying. And then when he started calling, you know, holding up books and talking about Marxism and, you know, all these things, it was just like, ooh, what's going on here? Which my coworker wasn't surprised at. We were in different rooms doing this on a virtual family academy. But yeah, we have things are happening in Mankato for sure. And I think it was on a show with, oh, it's not Hannity, but it's another anchor, where they brought up Mankato School District is and what they're doing, you know, as far as the school system. And then, you know, when we had, I do postings on our Facebook site. And so I had gone back, let's see, what did he say? We have on the Facebook page, Mankato ECFE has shared articles titled "How Parents Can Help Your Kids Make Lasting Interracial Friendships," which was an article that I posted, and I'm proud of it. I went back and read all of these that I had posted to try to see what they were reading into it. And then 11 tips to help children process the storming of the Capitol building, talking to kids about the violence at the US Capitol. And, you know, this is all things, some of those I stole, I'm sure, from a Minneapolis ECFE Facebook site. And I thought it was good. But he is bringing this up, which makes me realize that they're taking our Facebook accounts and they're just going through everything that we have posted for a long, long time, because this is, you know, yeah, these are not recent postings. So they're just fine tooth combing, you know, all our social media, and they're kind of coming after us. And yeah, and then I guess there's talk of lawsuits for something else within the district, and they have hired a lawyer. So yeah, this is kind of interesting times for us right now. I totally have the support of my director and my director's boss. And in fact, they asked us if we would redo the PowerPoint for another family academy in the spring, before these articles came out. And
Well,
I just don't know if that's
unfortunately,
right now.
Unfortunately, you guys, this is going to start happening because a lot of school districts, they're local. There are a lot of voices that are not as inclusive that want to take over school boards. And so there are a lot of people who want to, you know, are like, what is this anti-racist BS? We don't want this in our schools. And so if the school board's going to allow this, well, we're going to be in charge of the school board. And so unfortunately, local elections may start feeling less about what's important in general education for kids and more pushing a particular
Agenda.
And I'm not saying that what we have going right. I think we know as educators what's important for a well-rounded human being. What the virtues, so to speak, those 40 virtues, the 40 things that transcend race, religion, culture. Look up the Virtues Project to see the virtues. None of them have anything to do with politics, but they do have everything to do with connection, inclusion, respect, basic human needs, that it doesn't matter if you're black, brown, or purple, you deserve as a human being. And these are the things we want to teach our kids. And these are the things that we want our families to know about. Unfortunately, because we want to talk about these virtues and being a decent human being, it becomes political.
Right.
And I think school boards, especially in some, smaller districts, are going to be in trouble. And you've seen sometimes people are coming into school board meetings with signs, and they're screaming, and they're not letting school boards do a lot of good work, but they're not going to be able to do their good work when people come in screaming at them. And it started with masking. I mean, it's about masking too. It's about anything that anybody doesn't like. And unfortunately, people are getting louder and louder when they don't like something, instead of just saying, oh, I don't really like this, it makes me uncomfortable. Now they go screaming. So unfortunately, Lori, I have a feeling that this is the beginning. And I think this is going to be happening more and more. I hope I'm wrong, but I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be.
I think those local elections are gonna end up being super important.
I agree.
It's not gonna be minor policy differences. It's gonna be massive differences in perspective and values.
You know, it was really shocking to me when they talked about the postings I had made. So obviously, right, it was done quite a while ago. So I went back and I reread all of my postings, and they're totally worthy of being posted and talking to young children. And they're really, yeah, it's, it is.
Well, and the one site, Lori, that's really that is posting, their headline is "Make the News Truthful Again." So it's being twisted in a way that, it's tough. I'm really sorry that's happening to you. And it's hard. We're just trying to do our job and trying to make sure that our families have all the information. And that's what I keep telling myself too. Like, I get it if you don't believe in racism. I get it if you're white and you don't want to think about this, fine. But at least you're hearing it. And maybe someday down the road, it may be like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. I never really thought about that before. But to not be able to even just share that perspective, because like what you said, Susan, the perspectives that they're getting, it's not just us, it's other people. And unfortunately, when you have a room full of all the same homogenous people, it's hard for them to get those perspectives. I have very little diversity in my district. So the only way they're going to get some outside information about other people is by me sharing stories. So yeah, bye, Becca.
Yeah, these are definitely interesting times, man.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, I feel like I want to rewatch the entire conversation this morning because, I mean, we were from a macro level. I mean, we're just touching on so many things from an, individual agency in a classroom to shared perspectives to, to our communities as classes, to our wider society messages around things like Halloween and Christmas and commercialization and things like that we embrace, but we also need to address. And then, even talking about, our original ideas, thinking about parents was just, parents who monopolize conversations and, parents that are new and parents that sometimes can be a little bit mean and not sharing, to really what has gone from our sort of small micro observations and how we handle it as individuals to this much wider societal challenge of division and public discourse. And then, and of course now with technology, I think Laura, your experience with Facebook is that, we always have to remember that whatever we post, depending on what our settings are and how we post it, is archived data. And if somebody can find it, and not only can somebody find it, but they can manipulate it, right? So that you can have a video, and by the time somebody's done with that video, different words are coming out of somebody's mouth, or it's the part where somebody does say something that is respectful is edited out, and the only thing that is shared and that gets viewed. And so then a lot of people will just give up, right? And they'll go, well, I'm not going to use social media. And then the people with the time and the energy to use social media are the ones who are monopolizing the conversation, right? And then there are a whole lot of people who would like to be part of the conversation through social media and don't have access to the internet, right? So all of these things. Wow, you guys are amazing. I put in, you all are on here so you can get to it. I had sent out a topic survey, and so that, as you could tell from today, we don't need a topic. We just, like whatever we start with, we find all these connections. But I do want to also let other people know who haven't joined us or haven't joined us in a while, kind of the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about. So on that survey, if there are just topic ideas, that you would like, or you've heard from your colleagues that come up, or maybe as a result of today's discussion, like it's just like, yeah, let's keep this going, and you can cogently summarize what that point is. That'd be great too. So yeah, and so everybody is sort of needing to leave. Any final words as we're wrapping up?
Well, could I just say, we are in desperate need of an early childhood teacher. Someone just retired. So if you would know of anyone around Mankato area, if you would just be willing to have them look on our district site. We offer quite a few classes, and so we are in need. I just wanted to get that out there. Can you see in the chat box that article? Can you all see that I posted?
The one in Tennessee?
No.
Oh, Ellen, that was Ellen's. Okay.
That's the one I posted, but no, it didn't come through, Lori.
It didn't. Okay. I'll have to, it would be interesting to have you coworkers look at this article and see how you would feel from it. Susan, maybe I'll send it to you.
Okay.
And you can look at the article I was referencing about.
Would you like to, and you can, anybody who's on the Perfect Connections listserv can send a message to the listserv. So Lori, if you'd feel comfortable, but I'm also happy to do it for you. I can send it, we can send it out to the list and say that it's something that we would talk about. Will you be here next week?
I will. That would be great.
Yeah.
Because I'm not so techie, I don't have these skills.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, send it to me. And
Okay.
then, without it feeling like homework, we'll just send it all out, and we'll send it out and say that this will be a topic for our conversation next week. What a great follow-up. Yeah, because, small districts or large districts, it's happening. So, well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy the fall weather, however you plan to spend the next couple days.
Bye, everyone.
All right, bye.